The gradual release of responsibility. How to move from dependence to independence. Training number 3. The gradual release of responsibility, or the GRR as I will call it, is a widely known teaching model used in classrooms of all levels. It was developed in the 90s and aims to shift responsibility for learning from teacher, or in your case tutor, to student or tutee over time. First, a little background on how we learn. This illustration shows the different levels of learning engagement, along with how much information is typically remembered by each. It also points out which behaviors are more passive versus active. Ideally, in a tutoring environment, you will be creating more active opportunities for your student, thus increasing the percentage of knowledge they hold on to. Here's another illustration more specific to the GRR. It is cone-shaped, moving from left to right. You can see that in the first box, the teacher or tutor is speaking and explaining the concept or strategy. In the second, modeling it. Both boxes are still very passive for the student at this point. They have the responsibility of watching and listening here. By the third box, learning has shifted to engagement, with the tutor and student equally collaborating and working together on the concept. The fourth box is also active, as the tutor steps back a bit and guides the student through a concept as the student practices it. We'll talk more in this training about how box 3 and 4 differ. And then in box 5, we see how the student has reached an independent level and can complete the task, understand the concept or strategy without tutor support. This is the basic breakdown and model of the GRR. I'm going to take you through each box of this illustration using a common teaching motto: I do, we do, you do. First, the I do. Here is where direct instruction is given. The tutor takes full responsibility of the learning with their ability to explain, describe, and otherwise teach the concept. To be successful here, the tutor must 1. Establish a clear purpose, 2. Set learning objectives for the meeting, and 3. Be able to clearly explain the concept and steps necessary to learn the material. Think about these questions as you are preparing and planning for your tutoring session. I do also refers to tutor modeling. To effectively model how you understand a concept, think about what is going on in your head as you analyze it. How do you break it down so that you can understand it? Try to be as detailed and explicit with your thought processes as possible. Be consistent with the name of the concept, skill, or strategy. Explain what it is used for and when to use it. Share how you connect this learning with your prior knowledge from the course or from past courses. Demonstrate out loud the steps you take to understand the concept or to complete the task. This piece is called a think aloud. The more clearly you can share your thought processes out loud with your student, the better they can understand how you approach the learning. An effective think aloud takes time and practice, so you may want to prepare ahead of a session by writing down how you personally attack and comprehend the concept you're about to work on with your student. So the I do part of our GRR encompasses the first 2 boxes of our cone illustration. Next comes the we do, guided practice. Here is where learning responsibility slowly begins to shift from tutor to student. Guided practice is just as it sounds, practicing the understanding of the concept with guidance from the tutor. This could be in the form of answering textbook questions, completing math or science exercises, asking the student to reflect on or summarize what they have learned from you, streamlining notes so that they are more strategic and effective, making flashcards, etc. The idea here is that you as the tutor want to see evidence that your student is beginning to, quote, get it, even if that means their understanding is still tenuous and relying on leading questions from you. Look over some of these questions you'll want to ask yourself during the We Do phase of GRR. The last slide had a question about scaffolding instruction. What exactly is that? Scaffolding is taking something very large, like a complex skill, and breaking it down into manageable learning chunks. The word scaffolding actually applies to the physical apparatus that one uses to work their way up a building, such as something a painter or a brick pointer or a window washer would climb up on. It infers support. So, chunking material and learning, sequencing steps, starting with easier problems and working up to harder ones, and providing cues and tricks and mnemonics and illustrations and checklists and any other tool to help make learning easier is all a part of scaffolding instruction. We Do starts off very equally with the tutor and student having equal responsibility for the learning, working together collaboratively to understand the concept, but quickly moves towards guided practice, where the tutor now becomes more of a coach and uses directing, questioning, cueing, hinting, reminding, etc., to coax the student to understand on their own. This is the point where responsibility to learn subtly shifts from tutor to student. The final shift occurs during You Do, independent learning. At this stage, the student has completely taken the responsibility for learning on themselves and is able to apply the new skill and knowledge independently without help to other tasks. In a math course, this would mean that the student now understands how to solve their equations and can do so on a homework assignment or test with success. In a science course, it might mean that the student is able to take the concepts learned and successfully apply their understanding to a lab, essay, or research paper. In a Spanish course, it might look like the student being able to successfully translate a story because they now have the vocabulary and verb conjugation understanding to do so. Simply put, it is the student moving from practice with you to mastery on their own. It's our goal. And it moves us to the last box of our GRR cone. The next couple of slides will give you a chance to put your understanding of the gradual release of responsibility into practice. Read each scenario and decide whether you think it describes a successful GRR session or if it is missing an element of the process. If so, what is it missing? Scenario number 1. The tutor demonstrates how to solve slope-intercept problems. He works through and models 4 example problems on paper. Then he assigns the tutee to work on the odd-numbered problems on page 29. In this scenario, the tutor has started off well with explaining and demonstrating the slope-intercept problems. He has worked through and modeled, ideally using a think aloud, but then he skips right to that independent piece, asking the tutee to work on the odd-numbered problems on their own. The whole middle piece of collaboration and guided practice is missing from the tutoring session. Scenario number 2. Using a think aloud and scientific text, the tutor models 2 comprehension strategies useful in understanding Chapter 3, Section 1 of the Bio 2 text. Next, the tutee and she examine Section 2 of the text together, as the tutor guides the tutee through the use of one strategy for understanding the section. They then read Section 3 together, with the tutee taking the lead on using one of the 2 comprehension strategies modeled. Lastly, the tutee reads Section 4 independently and identifies one strategy that helped make the text make sense. This example is about comprehending a science text and the reading strategies that a tutor is teaching and showing her student in order to help them understand it better. The text itself has 4 sections, and you can see that the tutor has used the full extent of the GRR model through all 4 of those sections. The first section, she is modeling and thinking aloud how she is understanding the text. The second section, they are reading together and talking about it together. They're in the third section, they are still reading it together, but she is stepping back a bit and having the tutee take more of the lead in understanding the material. And in the fourth section, the tutee is reading the material completely independently. So this is a good example of the GRR in process. Scenario number 3. The tutor and tutee read a section of a psychology text out loud together, and then the tutor asks the tutee to complete the section questions assigned for homework. On the surface, this scenario might not look too bad, since the tutor and tutee are reading the text together, and then the tutee is being asked to answer the questions on their own. But what would make this session stronger, especially assuming that the reading is introducing new concepts and information, is if the tutor started off with modeling and thinking aloud their understanding of the text. This could be accomplished by breaking up the text so that the front end is more tutor modeled and the back end weans off more to tutee control. The session would then mirror a more traditional GRR approach. I'll end this training with one more chart. I really like this one because it clearly describes each step of the gradual release of responsibility and lists key behaviors in each for both the tutor and tutee. Take a moment to review it. The GRR is a teaching guide. Not every session, every time, will work with such simply defined steps. It may be easier to apply it to some content areas than others. But take some time to think about the courses you tutor and what you can personally glean from this training. Try to take away 2 or 3 goals from it and apply them to your sessions. Should you have any further questions or want more information on how to tutor using this model, feel free to contact me and we can work together to craft your sessions. Thanks so much.